Hey guys, today's video is going to be a book review of The Goblin Emperor by Katherine Addison, which I literally finished last night. This book has been on my radar basically since it came out, but I've not had a chance to own it or buy it much up until relatively recently. So that's, like 7 years I haven't been able to read it, and well, now I feel a lot better about having read it. I wish I'd read it sooner! The Goblin Emperor follows Maya, a young half-goblin, half-elf who is a prince of the Elf Empire, and he immediately ends up being propelled to the throne by the deaths of his father and all of his brothers that were before him in the line of succession. He now has to form a government and do all of the things that being an emperor entails, which involves giving up his own, private life in favor of being the most public figure in the entirety of the empire, and dealing with coups and stuff and all that sort of things. I loved this book. It was a really fascinating read that just blew me away. There's so much really interesting stuff in here. Now, the book does start with a really annoying thing that happens in a lot of fantasy books, which is it starts off with treaties on the languages and a list of all of the characters, gods, everything and anyone and everywhere that you could ever possibly need to know in the story. That does not sit well with a lot of people, but after that, and some slight teething issues with, vocabularies and forms of address being a bit, difficult to break into, but, it's a really worth it, it's really, really engaging. There's a lot of really interesting content in this book, because it really deals with what if the Emperor is an actual, somewhat likable being, but has to go by all of these things and try and actually do things differently than his forebears, and it really goes there. The world of the Ethuferas, I think I butchered that. It's a really entrenched world where there's lots of things that people don't do because it's not because tradition, more or less. And, well, Maya blunders in because he doesn't know half these traditions because his education's been really hamstrung. And so he's like, oh, but that's okay. And he basically unwittingly fixes these traditions, or at least some of them. He gets a lot of women into positions where they can actually do stuff. He's half goblin, so he understands the plight of the goblins that are about, and so he sort of is able to be a diplomatic incident in and of himself in some ways, but also pushes international relations, and there's all sorts of really great things that go along with what happens. What he's capable of doing way more than his forebears did, because he just doesn't know better. Or in fact, they knew worse. Or I don't know how to phrase that, but it happens. At the start of the book, Maya is a really quite passive protagonist. He really just does things because he's expected to, and doesn't really make a lot of choices himself to begin with. But as he goes on and gets more power and more sure of himself, well, he just is able to he becomes a really great character. Just really, really great character who isn't afraid as much as he was. He was abused and is really introverted to begin with, and then he manages to grow away and out of it. And probably the clearest sign of this that I picked up on was his birthday happens in the book, and he does not expect anyone to have gotten him any presents at all, doesn't expect anyone to have given a shit, and he's beset by a mound of presents that his secretaries and everything, they're having to sort of look through and pick through and be like, okay, so this is from this person, this one's this person, we've made up all of your thank you letters and everything, you just need to sort of do this. And he's like, but I have presents, I have presents for the first time in my life. And it's just, I just love him. He's such a cute little thing that, oh, he's just Now there's some really interesting sort of takes on social justice in this book, and honestly, I'm living for it because it really talks about social justice, but it doesn't do it very explicitly. It does it very sort of like, the language isn't there. They sort of are effectively talking about social justice, despite the fact that they're not talking about social justice. There's women who are now getting to be into positions of power and do things that, well, their male brothers and sisters were preventing them from doing, and stuff like that. So like, there's all sorts of things going on with that. He's having to undergo stuff with the sort of industrial revolution in some ways. There's an incendiary device that no one knows what that is until they work it out, and there's all sorts of interesting things there. And yeah, like, there's so many things that get talked about, and really, it's great. As I said earlier, the sort of vocabulary and forms of address in particular are a bit of a mindfuck to get your head around. You sort of go into it, and there's all sorts of things where he basically, like, they use thou and thy for, you know, the real world usage, which was like really personal and stuff. And well, that like, his thoughts are all in that, and it takes you a bit, especially because Maya is the emperor. He has to say we every time in public, and he's slipping back and forth between we, I, thou, all of that stuff. And it's really interesting to sort of play around with that a bit, but also that does make it a bit dense and difficult to break into to begin with. But it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth it to get past that bit. I, in fact, have this thing where a bit of code switching happens with me, and the more that I encounter particular stuff, I start like thinking or mimicking it unconsciously. So I start picking up bits of accents, but not all of it, because but in this case, I was sort of thinking I was getting myself confused, because I was going like, we, no, wait, no, I mean me, or I, or whatever, and oh dear, I was just getting a lot of mixed up with that a couple of days ago. I just really, really enjoyed this book, and I think it's great, and I think that everyone that loves fantasy should definitely check it out if they haven't already. Do it! So those are my thoughts. Yeah, really, really liked it. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this book, if you've read it before, or if you're not, tell me what you're excited about for it, because I'm very excited to talk about it with people, please. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and that you remember to like and share it, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the thumbnails over there to see other videos by me, click on the link in the description to join my Discord, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!